We good? Great. All right, the microphone's working. Great, thank you everyone for joining. It's great to be back here. I was here last year and there was a really good turnout. Day 2, after lunch, you're not sure what sort of turnout you're going to get. People kind of ducking away, wanting to get on transport to go home, but thank you for your support of us. We're excited to be here today talking about something very important about the future of workplace wellbeing, and obviously the reason we all attended in the last couple of days. Great to see some familiar faces, some late people turning up. Good on you, Des. But good to see you. In terms of me, I'm a husband, father of 2. I've got a 7-year-old and an 11-year-old. My 11-year-old daughter is a genuine tween now, and so she tells me what to do. But when I'm not being told what to do at home, at work, I'm the Vice President of Virgin Pulse. So at Virgin Pulse, our mission is to change lives for good. So it's great to have a genuine mission and a genuine purpose in what we do. We do that through our digital health platform, which is AI-driven, personalised platform that really supports people to drive engagement and our wellbeing outcomes is what we do. As part of that, we've got at Virgin Pulse Institute, what they do is they try to understand some of the data, the trends and the future of wellbeing, so we can support our clients to do that. And today I'm joined by our experts to talk about the future of wellbeing in Netta and Josh. Before I introduce them, a little bit more about the topic of the future of wellbeing. So the last 2 years has been unpredictable, and so for many of you in the wellbeing space, it's been really, really hard to be able to understand what is happening in this space and what's next. The good news is that that unpredictability has brought wellbeing to the forefront of conversations and been prioritised in a lot of the organisations that we talk to. So that's a good thing, but for good reason, right? If you have a look at mental health, there's a crisis with mental health in Australia. Cost of living pressures is putting increasing pressure on workplace and homes. And the lines between work and home are more blurred than they've ever been before. Add to that, what we're seeing in workplace, the changes in workplace, so organisational changes, generational change in workplace, which we'll talk about more today. And that really means that people are looking for more support from their organisations. They're looking for a focus on whole person wellbeing and a whole person approach. So the challenge now for us in this industry is how do we support the now, and how do we ensure that we're adjusting and evolving our strategies to support the future of wellbeing. So with that, I'd like to introduce Netta Efron. Netta, in Netta's role, I'm going to read this because...
you don't have to.
I will. She's the Global Director of People and Culture at Koala. She leads a team that shapes the company's people experience. Her experience is in progressive HR spans over 10 years of various industries from hospitality, retail and tech, and includes talent acquisition, policy development, coaching and mentoring leaders. A recent achievement she takes great pride in was the rollout of equitable and inclusive people processes that are designed to enhance the wellbeing of every team member. These include work from anywhere, parental leave, paid parental leave and life leave, which provides additional 10 days per year for her team. Love it. Actually, if you could talk more about that would be great, because I think there'd be a lot of interest in that. Netta enjoys discussing strategy and researching solutions to problems. She's incredibly passionate about innovative technology. When she's not working, Netta is a busy mother of 3, and she enjoys cooking, dancing with her kids, and in addition to being a self-proclaimed nerd, she has a lifelong love of learning and trying new things, as well as being a total sneakerhead, which I can see right here. Welcome, Netta.
Thank you.
Netta, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your role, a bit more about your role and how you're supporting wellbeing at Koala?
Yeah, so look, I look after all the people at Koala. We have a bigger team here in Australia and a smaller team in Japan that's growing. And one of the things that are very important to us as a business, as well as from a people and culture team, is the concept of people and planet. So Koala as a company is quite well known for, thinking about the entire experience of the customer and doing the right thing by the planet as well, so not taking any shortcuts. So our timber is sustainably sourced, and all of our supply chain is audited quite often to make sure that we're doing, everyone across that touches our products are paid fairly and in the right conditions, and that extends to the people here in Sydney as well as in Japan. I think one of the things that we're doing for well-being is being passionate about the leaders that we have in our organizations. I think the reality is it doesn't matter how many policies you have in place, the biggest impact for an employee would be the manager that they're working with, their direct manager. So making sure that from the hiring all the way to how we encourage our leaders to manage their teams in the business it's all about seeing the person, knowing them, what they need, what support, and making sure that it's quite a personal relationship, as opposed to, again, like recognizing the whole self, the whole person, what they need, and as a leader, what you can do to engage them, not just in work, but actually what other things are happening in their life. I think in the past, it was quite, common to, I'll just leave my life at the door and coming to the office and do my job, but that's obviously not the case anymore, and it's not what we're trying to do. So your direct manager has a huge impact on that. So it's a lot of work with leaders in the organization, and yeah.
Good, great. I think the leadership theme came through. It's come through the last couple of days, but this morning, psychologist from Australia Post was talking a lot about their key focus being that leadership support. So, great one. I'll introduce you, Josh. Josh is the Director of Employee Experience for the New South Wales Government's Department of Customer Service, where they work to push the boundaries and improve work for people across the employee life cycle. Josh is responsible for strategic direction and delivery of organisation-wide programs across learning, inclusion, engagement and organisational development. He is an advocate for inclusion and creates opportunities for growth and leadership to result in a workforce that reflects the diversity in communities that they serve. Over his career, Josh has established and led high-performing diverse teams and has fostered a spirit of innovation and collaboration and trust. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Love to start with the same question. How are you supporting wellbeing at customer service?
Look, we've got a complex workforce at customer service, many teams varying across frontline through to back office policy type roles. So we have to take a bit of a different approach. So we just recently ran a wellbeing campaign for our workforce, which kind of centred around financial, social and physical wellbeing as well, which was really well received. So we had some kind of great input from that. At some of the other levels, we're starting to think about the type of work that happens where we're just at the start, but really starting to dive into the challenge of role design, how we think about making roles a little bit more kind of structured and getting some of that balance that happens through. And the other thing that we've really had to focus on in the last kind of 12 months is really connecting people to purpose. So having a chance to say, how do we get clear on the work that we need to do, and then how do we give good recognition and feedback within the constraints of a public sector environment to really help people feel engaged in what's been a bit of a different time at work.
Good. I love that focus on job design. It's coming up a lot. The challenge is for a lot of workplaces is where do you start with job design? How do you tackle that? So, and it must be a tough ask from your end as well.
Yeah, and I think the key for us is to start small. So with so many different role types across the org, it's picking a kind of, small team within one of our contact centres to really think about, okay, well, how might we start there and, learn some lessons as we go, and then think about how we might be able to scale it to other parts of the organisation as well.
Great. All right, let's dive into the future of the workplace. And let's start sort of more broadly and look at just the future of the workplace itself before we even consider wellbeing. What does the future of the workplace look like for you, Josh?
I think it's an interesting one, and if we had have said, 2 or 3 years ago, what's the office environment or the workplace going to look like in a couple of years' time, I don't think any of us could have predicted what we've experienced. So we kind of go in with a little bit of that, knowing that there's still going to be an element of build it as we go and define it as we go. But I think we're going to see much more connection. We're starting to see a lot of companies bring people back into the workplace and back into an office environment. So thinking much more deeply about how we work, where we work. And then I guess with that comes some of the challenges around talent as well. So through the pandemic, we really took a statewide approach to talent acquisition, to think about, people can live anywhere. We've got, improved the way that we worked remotely and connected in different ways. So I think it's how do we then keep that more dispersed workforce connected and engaged in the right kind of way when there's that real push and juggle and balance to be saying, well, we want to see people in the workplace more, coming back in more. So I think it's going to be an interesting time for us from that how we work, where we work perspective.
Great. Netta, what are you thinking about the future?
First of all, it's exciting. But I think the reality of AI and technology and how that impacts the workplace is probably something that we're all going to have to deal with. The complexity of the work that we're doing is probably going to change with the more technology that we have. And again, I think that kind of the managers and middle management and their role in organizations, I think we've been asking a lot of them in recent years. And I just touched on that, right? Like even we expect them to know about the person, and we've all got to know each other's pets and pets and kids, and so middle management are kind of stuck in between. A lot of them are player coaches. A lot of them need to support their team's well-being as well as themselves. So trying to figure that role out a little bit better. With technology and introducing a lot more complexity, this is probably going to be super interesting. We were chatting before, and I think we were all talking about like workplace itself, what the office of the future, or like 3 to 5 years from now looks like if we're all there. And lessons that we've learned through the pandemic, is open space still a thing, or the kind of zones and how people get to do their work in the workplace itself. I think it's going to be really interesting as well. And I think as we're transitioning more people back into the workplace and welcoming Gen Z into the workplace, what their expectations are from the workplace is going to be really interesting too.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? We got through a question about the future of the workplace, and no one talked about robots, so that was good. So we're talking about dive into sort of well-being and the future of well-being at your organisation. Josh, I'll start with you. What are some of the key issues that you think we'll need to focus on, and what are some of the trends that you're seeing?
I think what's really coming through is that sense of connection and community for people. There's some research that came out around a few weeks ago about the drivers of mental wellness in the workplace. And in Australia, not surprisingly, one of the leading contributors was inclusion, how people feel like they are included in a workplace and how they feel like they belong. And I think to some of the points that Netta spoke about already, the generational aspects, so we've got quite a large graduate cohort in New South Wales government, thinking about those groups that are starting their career in a very different way to how many of us have. And then some of our, we've got a large portion of our workforce population as well, which is starting to plan for exit and retirement. So thinking about that knowledge capture and transfer in a bit of a different way as well. I think the challenge will really be how we keep a pulse on the inclusion element and really, kind of help people feel like they are part of a community. We know with some of the other challenges that we're experiencing outside of work around, cost of living pressures, around, health and some of those other challenges, what we tend to do in those times is really lean on our community. And we're seeing that sense of community in the way that many of us knew it has shifted. So how do we start to kind of reimagine what that looks like to support people in a different way? And I think for us, some of those challenges as well, as we think about what's in the future, we're only scratching the surface of some of those issues, especially around cost of living, where, for our frontline workforce in particular, we're hearing that, there's difficulty in accessing healthcare. There's difficulty in doing things in ways that we've done in the past, and people are making a decision whether to see a GP or whether to put a meal on the table. So I think the way that we support people and help them feel like they're a part of something will really shift over the next little while as well.
Netta, how are you thinking?
I agree. I think the role of employers in their employees' lives is going to become a lot bigger. I think that especially Gen Z is expecting a lot more from their employers than maybe previous generations did. If in the past the expectation was, I show up, I do my job, and you pay me, then I think the younger generations coming into the workforce are expecting, I want to be reflected in the organization. I want the causes that I believe in to be the causes the organization believes in. All of these elements that go way beyond just like do your job, the job description. I think that's going to be really huge for organizations, and those that can get ahead of that are probably going to be better suited in a better position to attract that talent. But yeah, I think the expectation from employers in the future would be like, hey, like if I work for you and I can't go to the GP, isn't that in your best interest for me to be healthy so that I can do my job better? And as an employer, you're like, yeah, well, definitely want you to do your job better. So I think younger generations are going to be expecting their employers to take a bigger stand and role in their life, and the benefits that they're getting, I think we're going to see them keeping expanding beyond just the workplace, but a lot more holistically in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Great. Josh, you touched on the cost of living. Any more sort of thought on the cost of living and how that will...
Yeah, I think we're seeing it, I guess, as well in across a range of workforce analytics. If we think even about, we've got school holidays coming up, so we've got a large population of our workforce who are parents, so we've got to think really differently about what some of the support that we could in play, and keeping in mind we've got some of that constraint of the public sector industrial frameworks that we're working within. But if we think about average vacation care for a child is around $100 plus per day. If you've got more than one child, what's that kind of look like? We balance that up against a really rapid program of delivery for large kind of government and infrastructure projects that are happening at the same time. So people taking large chunks out, we're really starting to think differently about how can we support parents with some of that expense and some of that strain, whilst balancing the kind of rapid schedule of deliverables that we've got as well. But yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a lot more for us to think about in terms of how we can give more holistic well-being support to people that helps with some of those financial, knowing that financial is a large component and driver of our holistic well-being. And as Netta said, what's the role of employers in that?
Yeah, I think there's a role for government there too, like in terms of being able to supply the infrastructure for people to be able to support them, whether from a healthcare perspective. I saw an article the other day around the first remote hospital, virtual hospital, where they're supporting people through telehealth with hospital visits, unheard of. So that some of these things I think will come to the fore over the next few years as well. Netta, any thoughts on purpose and how that's going to drive change over the next few years?
Definitely, I think, and I think we've all touched on that before, the idea that if I identify with my workplace and if I feel there's purpose more than just my 9 to 5, then as an employee, I'm much more inclined to, invest more time and effort into my role or into the wider organization and the purpose. So I think there's definitely more role in that. For us at Koala, I similar to your point around like how do we support school holidays or anything else that comes up in our employees' life. So that's one of the things where we were thinking about like what makes sense for our employees and trying to be as inclusive as possible. We came up with life leave and we were like, great, you get these 10 days and you can use them pretty much for whatever you need. It's not annual leave, and don't top up your annual leave with that, but definitely if you're moving now or if your kids are on school holidays and here's a day where you want to spend time with them and do something with them, don't dip into your annual leave. We want you to look after yourself, your family, or whatever. If your pet is unwell and now needs surgery, right? Then this life leave is pretty much for anything that life throws your way. And it's just one way in which we're telling our employees, hey, we want you to be well, and we know a lot of things can come up. Here's a bit more time.
Love it, and I think a lot of people out here will like that idea of life leave. How did you, and we're running out of time, but how did you, I guess really quickly, how did you be able to support that internally with the executive team?
I'm very lucky that they're very supportive. I think a lot of time getting signing off on time rather than actual money that needs to go into something is easier. It's a lot about relationships, and I think the team definitely felt that like the burnout and the need for teams to be able to have that tool in their toolbox, especially for managers, to go like, you know what, take a life leave. Just, I can see you need this. We tell our team, do it on a Friday, do it on a Monday when it's easier, and don't worry about your team, just, take the day.
So it's permissible.
It's yeah, I think it was easier to digest.
Yeah. Josh, any quick tip on how do you get, wellbeing strategy supported by, the executive team?
I think it's having the holistic business case. There's even if we think about at a much broader whole of country level, there's some interesting research and stats out there which talk to the expense of when workplace mental health or wellbeing isn't going well. So I think it's trying to quantify some of the cost and build that into the business case as well. It becomes more compelling and beyond this is a nice thing to do, or it's a great way to support people. But the link to cost and productivity, I think, is a key in that as well.
Great. We need to leave because otherwise someone's going to really boot us off. But I want to thank Josh and Netta for their time today. I think from from a summary point of view, I think we've talked about a few different things up here. We'd love to talk more, whether it's the Virgin Pulse stand over here or afterwards. I think you just need to take a strategic approach to wellbeing. It's not something that we can do tactically anymore or bit by bit. Take a strategic approach. Think about preventative health, I think, is key. And make sure that you can demonstrate value on what you're doing. Otherwise, the future of your wellbeing program is always going to be, reviewed. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you.